Good morning, my friends. UFC 293 recap here. Sydney, Australia, where we saw a belt, a title change hands. Israel Adesanya losing decisively to Sean Strickland. I woke up this morning and one of my sons came up to me and I told him what transpired, and he said, "How is that possible, Dad? Sean Strickland isn't that good. How did Israel Adesanya lose? He must have had a bad night." And I said, he did look like he had a bad night, but Sean Strickland was the better fighter, dominated 4 of 5 rounds, fought like a champion. And you look at the end of that first round, Sean Strickland laying it on Israel Adesanya. And what a masterful performance, not only from the offensive side of things, but also from a defensive perspective. Sean Strickland learning from Alex Pereira and turning the tables here. A lot of folks are clamoring as we speak for a rematch between Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland, and I don't believe that needs to happen. Let's take a serious look at what's in front of us, my brothers. Israel Adesanya has lost 2 out of his last 3 bouts. May I propose to you Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, and then Sean Strickland can fight the winner of Paulo Costa, Khamzat Chimaev, or potentially the winner of Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. The thing is, we also have to consider that Sean Strickland appeared to come out of this fight completely unscathed. I don't think he took a significant strike throughout the entirety of yesterday's championship contest. Maybe a few leg kicks were landed on Sean Strickland, but not much other than that. So let's walk our way through this card. All that was UFC 293. And the first fight of the night, we saw Kevin Jousset defeat Kiefer Crosby. Kiefer Crosby, Bellator product, who fizzled out there. And Kevin Jousset, although he may be a lower level fighter, was able to dispose of Crosby rather easily. I advocated for the unders in that matchup, and we saw they ended up hitting, and Kevin Jousset was able to lock up the submission, I believe a rear naked choke on Kiefer Crosby. One thing that stood out to me while I was watching that fight, you saw Kiefer Crosby laid out on, he was on all fours trying to get back to his feet and had his wherewithal, his sense of awareness was completely gone. Did not protect his neck from the choke at all. Kevin Jousset locks it in, and soon after you see the tap by Kiefer Crosby. So cheers to Kevin Jousset. And then Kevin Jousset calls out Ian Gary out of all fighters. He wants Gary. I don't think he's getting that fight, folks, but we'll see. We'll see. I say let nature take its course here. Jousset, perhaps people will see the equity here now in Jousset, and they'll give a matchup against a competent fighter, an opponent that could ragdoll Jousset. But we'll see. We'll see. So that was an interesting bout. Then we have Sayonara Shane Young. Shane Young came in. Originally, he was sitting at minus 200, minus 170 or so, then down to minus 122. And the ship has sailed for Shane Young, taking a loss to Gabriel Miranda, who disposed of Shane Young in I don't want to say necessarily dramatic fashion, but he handled Shane Young accordingly. And I saw up and down my timeline folks clamoring about Shane Young's greatness, and I didn't see it. I picked Miranda there, and Miranda came through in shining form. And Shane Young, that was probably the last we saw of him in the UFC. Likely got his walking papers there. So thank you for your services, Shane Young. I know you've put up a good fight many times, but no more. No more. Time to find a new occupation. Next up, we have Charlie Radtke, who defeated Blood Diamond Mike Mathetha. Mike Mathetha is another fighter who will likely get his walking papers here. And on the other side of the fight, you have Charlie Radtke, who wasn't necessarily a superstar-esque performance, workman-like performance for 3 rounds. Did enough against an opponent who is low level in Blood Diamond. He has a few strikes here and there, but other than that, not much to write home about. And Radtke takes the mic after the fight and creates a ruckus in the crowd. And you have to wonder who's next for Charlie Radtke. I ask of you, which opponent would you recommend coming off of a victory over Blood Diamond? Excellent question. Sean, we have a comment here. Sean Strickland versus Pereira 2. Oh, I don't know if Strickland's going to come back, or Pereira's going to come back down to 185. That's a good question. It seems like he's making a run towards that belt up at light heavyweight, but he could come back down here and bonk Sean Strickland as he did in the past. But what was interesting, one of the tweets that we saw last night from Alex Pereira was that he's thrilled for Sean Strickland, and he helped him in preparation for this fight camp, which is great. So I'm excited that Strickland has the belt now. Next up, we had a matchup between Landon Quinones and Nasrat Haqparast. Haqparast, massive favorite, came in and got the job done in a closely fought contest, and walked away with the victory there. I would like to see Quinones back in the UFC again. Hopefully they'll give him another shot, because he did fight his ass off out there. There's no doubt about that. And Haqparast, say what you want about him, he tried to get the grappling going. He went for it early. The cardio held up, and he ended up crossing the finish line, getting the W. So what's next for Haqparast? Excellent question. Then we have a fight between Jamie Mullarkey and John Makdessi, where there may have been some home cooking involved. The home fighter from Australia, Mullarkey, gets the nod. I saw a 30 to 27 scorecard. Also saw a few 29-28s. You watch the first round. First round likely went to Mullarkey there in a fight where you have to wonder how much are these leg kicks valued by the judges. And every time Makdessi was throwing, Mullarkey would come right back at him with an equally as powerful and sometimes more powerful leg kick. And Makdessi was darting in and out as he had done in the past. Makdessi drops the first round in Mullarkey. Second round, closely fought round. At the end of the round, with about 15 to 20 seconds left, Makdessi ends up partially dropping Mullarkey and lands the most significant strike of the bout. But was that enough to take that second round from Mullarkey, who around the 2-minute mark, up until the 2-minute mark, was doing well in that round and got hit with a groin shot? It was a break in the action. Mullarkey did not want to wait, wanted to restart the action. And I've noticed in years past, watching UFC since the early 90s, that if a ref breaks the fight up and separates the fighters when there's a groin strike or a foul, the judges tend to forget what happens prior to that foul, and you almost get like a fresh restart. it's incredible. I go back to Paiva, Zumagulov. There's been many, many, many others throughout the course of time. But in this spot, Malarkey likely lost that second round. And then the third round, Malarkey comes out, starts landing his jab, gets busted up. Believe his nose was broken. And both of these fighters trading as the final bell, the final horn sounds. Close fight. I have no problem if they opted to give the decision to Makdessi, but I also had a hunch that in Australia, the crowd would be a factor. The gas tank was a factor, but then you also had Malarkey, who he fought as if he'd been knocked out previously, which he had. So he was very tentative, very gun shy. And for a fighter like Malarkey, who is typically a very aggressive fighter, he got away from his strengths. And that was one of my causes for concern headed into this matchup. But I hit Malarkey at minus 190, laid 2 units, and it ended up cashing. And I think when you consider all factors into that equation, wasn't a surprise to see Malarkey walk away with the decision there in a closely contested bout. So cashed the 2 units on Malarkey there. That was the only play of the night. And yes, you are right. Let's see. Makdessi won. Okay, I could see that. The durability is an issue. He isn't the same anymore, Moise. I do agree with that. So we may be potentially have a fade spot in the near future. Oh, you've never heard of them. These fighters participated in bouts on UFC 293, Sahil Pandey. But I have no problem with Malarkey getting the win. Some extra coin in my pocket. And also the home cooking was something that all handicappers should have considered there. Even if it was a very closely lined fight, you always have to realize that sometimes the crowd is a factor there, and it was a close fight. But Malarkey gets the win, and we move up over 125 units profit. Putting out free plays all year long. The ROI is going up and having our 6th consecutive tracked year. So that was nice. Then we get into Chepe Mariscal defeating Jack Jenkins. Now, a lot of folks on my timeline also here, they say fluke injury. He was posting when he ended up falling onto the mat, but he was thrown, right? He was thrown a judo throw. Mariscal ends up using his physicality, and Jenkins, the elbow dislocates. I believe that Mariscal deserves some credit here for his efforts. I know Jenkins was looking great throughout most of the fight, but it takes one moment, and that was a vulnerability there for Jenkins. I know folks may consider it a fluke, but Mariscal, a very physical fighter. We saw against Peak, he will go for it, and you cannot count him out there. And he was pumped up also watching the crowd's reaction after he got Jenkins out of there. And also he ended up, I think they call that a verbal submission for Jenkins, but should have received a TKO victory in that spot. He also could have laid the lumber on Jenkins when he was out on the mat there, decided not to do so. Here we go. So now Jack Jenkins is going to have to heal up. Let's see. Moise, you said all week Chepe is going to save America. And he did. He did have that dog in him. And you know who else has saved America? Sean Strickland saved America last night. That was an incredible performance. We'll get into that in a minute, but let's work our way through this card. Let's keep chatting away. UFC 293 recap here. Thank you, everybody. I know we're live streaming on Twitter and also YouTube right now. Closing in on 10,000 followers and putting out lots of free content on a regular basis. And that's what really matters, is the backbone here. There's a long history of success that I've been trying to cultivate and share with others. And and it hasn't been behind a paywall this year. And I feel confident that we've helped a lot of people. And cheers to you for tuning in today. Thank you. So Carlos Ulberg defeats Da Un Jung. That was another pick we ended up getting right here. 9 picks went 9-3 on the evening with the Fight Morning Breakdown show. And Ulberg, here's a situation where the fight doesn't go the distance. Backers end up cashing their ticket because Da Un Jung tapped with 11 seconds left in the fight. And what can you say? I haven't seen them go to the replay to determine a tap I've been watching the sport since basically its inception here and since prior to the UFC's inception. So I have rarely seen this happen. Can somebody point to me a time when they used replay to determine whether a fighter tapped after the bout has ended? And it was a dominant fight for Ulberg. There was a situation where I think DC was saying that Da Un Jung was gaining some steam and that Ulberg was huffing and puffing. But then you saw Ulberg turn the tide and start landing takedowns late in the fight, get the mount position, end up tapping out Da Un Jung. So congrats to those who had Ulberg by submission. I didn't expect Ulberg to win via submission. He's a striker by trade, but you could see he's been doing some work in the city kickboxing training room, and the trainers that have been helping him out with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And then Da Un Jung, still a young fighter, but the arrow's starting to point down now at this stage in his career. Let's be honest with ourselves. Next up, we had Tyson Pedro defeating Anton Turkalj. The pleasure man goes down in flames. And how about Tyson Pedro's celebratory efforts after the bout? That was incredible. He must have practiced that in front of the mirror at home hundreds of times. But it looked great. The fight ending sequence was phenomenal. And Pedro gets the crowd going. That's the other thing. The crowd was lit, as the young folks say. And Pedro gets the victory. And cheers to those who locked in Tyson Pedro as a dog or even close to that. I recommended Tyson Pedro here yesterday on the breakdown show. He was the pick. And Turkalj, I believe that's his 3rd UFC loss here. Not good. Not good. So Turkalj goes back to the drawing board, and he's a talented fighter, no doubt, but Pedro gets it done. Then we had another eye poke here delivered by Austin Lane, as well as a groin strike in the first exchange, basically. Pushes off to maintain some distance, and the hand and fingers end up in the eye of Justin Tafa, and Justin Tafa came back and made him pay. The accuracy was on point for Justin Tafa. Lays out Austin Lane, follows him to the mat, and starts landing Donkey Kong-ish ground and pound on Austin Lane's noggin, and really, really did a number on him there. Got him out of there. Left absolutely no doubt whatsoever. So cheers to Justin Tafa. Another pick we got correct. And he disposes of Austin Lane in dramatic fashion. By the way, bets yesterday went 1 for 1, and we are now, believe 9% ROI in 2023, and picking our spots, only a few bets per card. I strongly urge you to do your due diligence when researching MMA handicappers, and be wary of those who are willing to risk a third or so of their bankroll on any given fight card. That is a recipe for disaster most of the time. You could potentially get an edge here and there, but you've worked too hard to give away everything that you have profited. And also, when you're risking 20, 30% of your bankroll, that's a dangerous proposition. So I advocate for a measured approach every time out, slow and steady, and go get what's yours. Let's talk Manel Kape defeating Felipe dos Santos in a bout that Manel Kape showed a number of vulnerabilities when he's pressured. I know he's typically a counter striker, and he was landing the more impactful blows, but Felipe dos Santos was giving it right back to him, and he landed a couple of knees up the middle where he was lunging towards Manel Cap. Those were within inches of finding the button and putting Cap out. I know Cap won this fight, but Felipe dos Santos' stock goes up. Manel Cap, he talked so much smack in the lead up to this bout, saying that he was going to murder Felipe dos Santos on behalf of Kai Kara-France, because Kai Kara-France did not take the fight. And look where we are here. So Cap wins this fight. By the way, love the flyweight division. The technical striking that was taking place there, beautiful. The fight hit the mat a few times. They got right back up to their feet in the larger octagon. This was amazing to watch. The crowd was in it. And firefight. That would be, if you look up firefight in the dictionary, this is what you see. Manel Cap gets the win. The fight goes the distance. I thought this one wasn't going to hit the scorecards, especially due to the energy regulation issues that younger fighters typically have, but that wasn't a situation here. Felipe dos Santos with cardio for days. How about that cardio of Felipe dos Santos? Very, very, very impressive. And Manel Cap was pushed. He was pushed to the brink, but the veteran savviness ended up helping him out, and he gets the win. So cheers to Manel Cap there for walking out with a victory. And who's next? Man, I cannot wait for Royval to take on the champion Pantoja in a rematch. That is something I'm looking forward to. Can't wait for that bout. I've had that one on my fridge ever since it was announced, so hope it comes to fruition. Can't wait. Might have a play on the dog in that matchup, in the rematch. Next up, we have Alexander Volkov, who really put it on Tai Tuivasa. Tuivasa had his moments, had his leg kicks going, was beating up the lead leg of Alexander Volkov, but didn't have much other than that. We know that there's a button on Tai Tuivasa, a quit button, and he ended up tapping, but he was brutalized, beaten, the size advantage, and also being at a significant disadvantage from a technical standpoint. Tuivasa is a brawler, a banger. That's really who he is. There's not much else to his game. I mean, he can do shoeies. Everybody loves watching folks do that. But there's a segment of the population who enjoys witnessing folks spit into a shoe, fill it with an adult beverage, and then guzzle it down. So Tuivasa, he's a crowd favorite, but Volkov gets the job done here. I thought at some point Tuivasa was going to end up landing on Volkov. We've seen Volkov go down in flames before after looking great throughout the majority of fights, but I also said that there's a world where Volkov gets through this, especially as a minus 245 or so favorite, and he crosses the finish line with a dominant victory, and he gets a submission and Ezekiel's choke. Alexei Olnik would be proud. I tweeted that yesterday. And guess who showed Volkov that choke? Yes, Alexei Olnik. Long time ago. So cheers to Alexander Volkov for walking away with the victory there. Very impressive, very impressive. And when he's motivated and when the durability is there, he's a tough out Volkov, man, especially when he's on top of you on the mat, that long frame. Wow. So who's next for Alexander Volkov? And then we have the main event of the evening. We spoke about this earlier in the recap, but we have Sean Strickland defeating Israel Adesanya. I don't want to say shocked about this because Sean Strickland is a dog and he is somebody who's going to fight hard for your money. And there were paths to victory here. I didn't expect Sean Strickland to be getting the better of the striking for the majority of the fight. And that's really what took place. Adesanya landing pitter-patter strikes, looking to stay evasive. And it seemed like after Adesanya got dropped in the first round, he regained his equilibrium, and it wasn't an issue where he was so hurt that he was off the rest of the fight. After the first round, Adesanya gets back to his corner, and he says to his cornerman, "I was just playing with him. You got dropped, and then you were getting hammered against the fence for the last 10 seconds or so of the round." So, talented fighter, Adesanya, yes. Did he get up for this fight? Possibly not. But let's be honest with ourselves. Sean Strickland's a dog, someone who will fight hard for your money. And he came through there. The fight never hit the mat. The fight never hit the mat for 25 minutes. And I'm live tweeting throughout this and realizing Sean Strickland's on his way to a victory here. He ends up hurting Adesanya multiple, 3 or 4 times. Adesanya's face swelled up at the end of the fight. And then you saw an exchange between Adesanya and Dana White, where it seems as if something was whispered into the ear. I don't know what was said, obviously, but I hope there isn't a rematch here. I don't think we need to see a rematch. Sean Strickland can get either Paulo Costa or Hamzat Chimaev or, let's see, or Dricus du Plessis. But I also wouldn't mind seeing Israel Adesanya have to get through Dricus du Plessis to get back to Sean Strickland. That would be a course of action I'd like to see. There's a lot of bad blood there. No rematch. I agree, Moyes. No rematch. We do not need to see an Adesanya Strickland rematch. Get some new blood in there. I know Adesanya may be the most talented fighter, but let's be honest with ourselves. This is a new reign here. And the UFC is going to cultivate greatness here. And one fight at a time. Cousin Gabe, welcome aboard, sir. Great to have you here. So where does the UFC go from here on out? That is the question. We've got some great fights headed our way next week. We've got Jack Della Maddalena taking on Kevin Holland in a welterweight matchup that a lot of folks are looking forward to. I've had that circled on my fridge for a while. I see people on either side of the fight. A lot of folks are getting or locking in Jack at dog odds, and then you have the more well-rounded fighter with a much better ground game in Kevin Holland. But can you trust Kevin Holland to take the fight there and keep it there? I know against the Dirty Bird, Tim Means, Kevin Holland was able to lock up a submission there. We actually cashed on that prop. I believe it was like plus 1,400 or something like that for Kevin Holland via submission. But looking forward to that. Jack is the favorite now. Okay, interesting. And I was hoping that they would get Jack on this card, but on the Sydney card, but that did not end up happening. So great fight. Looking forward to that fight as well. Want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Remember to go get what's yours, one fight at a time. Also, do your due diligence when you're potentially taking or heeding the advice of MMA handicappers. There are some folks out there who spend more time marketing themselves and treating it as a business than they are actually breaking down fights. I think that's a recipe for disaster when folks do that. Michael, I hope you had a great night of wagering. Good morning, Lou. We ended up coming out the other side victorious. Another thing I wanted to mention, when folks are handicapping fights, when you get into this game, a lot of folks, they're here for the passion of the sport. They want to better themselves and make some dough, and they love breaking down fights. And then another side of it is when success is attained, a lot of folks now have to change gears and develop a business model, and they're juggling multiple venues. And some folks, you see the betting start to falter because they're trying to market themselves and they are trying to run a business. A lot of folks will see success if they get back to their bread and butter and what got them to where they are. So just something to consider. Just something to consider. If you're having a losing year, if you've changed gears, if you're spending more time creating your website than you are actually breaking down fights, that is a problem. But I'm only one man doing the best I can here, one fight at a time. Remember, go get what's yours. 6 consecutive profitable years putting out plays this year, all for free as we continue this journey. If you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing to the channel, that'd be fantastic for us here. So nothing behind a paywall here. We are doing the best we can and helping you win one fight at a time. So have a great Sunday. Go get what's yours. Have a great day. Let's do this, my brothers.